Hello and welcome to Tight Lines. With the worst of winter still a gleam of apprehension in most people's eyes and temperatures generally holding up, it's no surprise to learn that fly fishing is not only possible but a brilliant option. The rivers haven't been great for Grayling with all the water we've had, but still waters are reaping the benefit. Hywel Morgan joins me in the body this evening, and he's one of those fly anglers who makes the most of his chances, so we'll find out how he's tackling the current possibilities. As well as all the chat here in the body, also coming up on today's show, we get out with Andy Ford on the beautiful River Dee in North Wales, where back in December, global enthusiasts gathered for the European Grayling Festival. We also spend a session with specialist Duncan Charman on Berkshire's River Loddon, where he had his sights set on specimen perch, one of the great winter targets. And in a new look fishery focus, I'll be looking at the prospects in store for all UK anglers with tips on what species to fish for and the best way to catch them. Well, it's good to have you back in the body, mate. I bet you've had a bit of an exciting drive with the weather we've had, haven't you?
I tell you, last night I thought we'd be flooded out. It didn't stop raining. I hear you had a lot of rain down in London as well.
Incredible, mate. It's just, I don't know. Has that really badly affected your fishing?
It has, because winter to me means out in the river and go and catch one of my favourite fish. You know, it's Grayling time.
Yeah.
You know, once that trout season finishes on the large reservoirs, then the reservoir stuff's put away, Grayling stuff comes out, but I haven't been out since December. But fingers crossed, and it didn't rain too much in North Wales. I'm on the River Dee tomorrow morning.
That would be good. Because ironically, Grayling really like it cold, clear and low, don't they?
It's been one of those things. We haven't had a winter. You know, it has, I mean, how many times have you got up in the morning and there's been frost and ice? Not very often this winter.
4 or 5, that's all. Yeah.
Exactly.
Incredible. Yeah. Still, maybe we've got it to look forward to. Or not, depending on your perspective. Now, back in December, Hywel suggested we might like to film an event he was taking part in on the gorgeous River Dee that he just mentioned. He, like many enthusiasts across the world, are avid fans of the European Grayling Festival, a true celebration of the Lady of the Stream. Andy Ford jumped at the chance to see what it was all about.
Most anglers are gently obsessed by their sport, and that's why we get up at stupid o'clock in the morning to go fishing. And here we are in North Wales, a stone's throw from the River Dee. And today that obsession's all about one fish, the Grayling. It's an event which was born 14 years ago. It's become one of the competitions to fish in European fly fishing circles, and the River Dee is perhaps the biggest draw. This year there were 27 teams taking part, with anglers from all over the world swapping ideas, tactics and tall tales. Most of the teams are named after classic fly patterns, like dunkles or grey dusters. Sometimes the weather here means there's more talk about fly patterns than fishing with them for the Grayling. But this year, the Dee was in prime condition. Perfect flow, a perfect colour, and a perfect backdrop. It's enough to make even the most seasoned international dewy-eyed. For those like John Bowen, though, this was a new experience.
John, anticipation's everything in fishing. I know you haven't fished this bit of water before. How are you feeling at the moment?
A little bit nervous, but hopefully it'll be good. Looks a good stretch.
I'm told there are some very big fish in this pool.
Well, the rumour is 50 centimetre Grayling came out a few days ago, so I don't know if it was a stretch or not, but you never know.
What do you think of this event, the festival?
Well, it's my first time here, so so far so good. There's a big international kind of selection, I guess, of people.
This is one of those events, though, where everyone can find something to enjoy. For the ultra-competitive, like England's national champion, Phil Dixon, it's the chance to take on the very best. Others are here more for the social side of things, to watch the best in action and fish alongside them on an exceptional stretch of river. The competition's fished over 4 sessions split across the 2 days. Fishing takes place on beats of the lovely River Dee located around the town of Llangollen. Teams are made up of 3 anglers, 2 fish each session, and the third acts as a steward for another team. John would end up with just 4 fish like this one over the weekend, but others fared much better. There were 612 grayling landed between the 81 anglers over the 2 days. So how do you catch grayling on the fly? Competition fishing these days has become all about a style of fly fishing called check nymphing. And who better to show us what it's all about than England international Scott Nellins, who this year was fishing for the Wales Ospreys team.
Scott, how many fish have you had this morning so far?
Just one so far, Andy, but I've dropped a couple. Had 2 on at once, unfortunately, and the one on the point fly came off, but I got one of them. But since then I've dropped a couple of nice fish, which is a bit of a shame, but still early days yet. Once the weather warms up, it might switch them on.
Just like you to explain to us the sort of the technique that you're using.
Yeah, well, as you can see, I've got a long rod and very short line. Basically, all I'm doing is fishing the seam here, casting about 45 degrees upstream, and just tracking down with my rod, making sure the rod is downstream of the flies at all times so they don't drag around, swinging naturally in the current. I've got a small piece of coloured line there just above the water, which acts as an indicator, and when that stops or jags away or does something out of the ordinary, that's when you strike. Flies I've got on, the fly on the point is a weighted fly, which carries the smaller the smaller 2 nymphs on the droppers down to where hopefully the fish are. The coloured piece of nylon, and you want to try and get that just above the water surface, as it is there now. So if it jags away or pauses, just like that. Yeah. 9 times out of 10 it's a rock or a stick or a branch or something, but one time it's a fish. And
we're just making our way down the pool, sort of every time Scott casts, you take a couple of steps down just to cover the water and then you come back down again. Yeah,
we've got quite a big beat. It's about 200-300 yards long, and we've only got a short while to cover that, so we want to get through as many times as possible. Grayling are naturally a shoaling fish, so once you find one, you tend to find 2 or 3, which is what happened this morning.
But Scott's tactics on his super light 3-weight fly rod were about to attract some unwanted attention from one of the other residents of the River Dee.
You may notice in the background that Scott's playing a fish. On any other day, the fish he's playing would be very exciting because he thinks he's got a salmon. You can see on a 3-weight, that's giving him quite a lot of sport. Unfortunately, the salmon does not count in this competition. But do you know what? I can't wait to see it.
Unfortunately, the only sight we'd get was a fleeting glimpse of a fish that was easily 10 pounds before the inevitable happened.
So 20-minute fight, salmon on a 3-weight, salmon 1, 3-weight 0.
Hardly a surprise on that kind of tackle. There were several salmon landed though, and a few sea trout. But as the morning session ended, it was clear the grayling had certainly been on the feed.
So Davey, talk us through your morning.
Well, it was a good morning. I fished with Hywel Morgan from the Italian team and got a good masterclass. He started catching some good grayling, 47 centimetres. He got a tangle and he was undoing one of his flies and got a take at his feet. So we started fishing around my feet with dropping the line at my chest and just feeding it out with a rod. And we got 23 grayling. And we probably got 12 of them from where we felt the take from my hand as you let go of the line.
These are the type of flies that Davey and most of the other anglers were using. Some heavy to get your cast down, some tiny and brightly coloured to attract the fish. But it's effective bite indication that can make all the difference.
I just wanted to grab Scott's setup here so I could show you that grayling leader, and here it is. You can probably just see the colour of it against my jacket. At the top end here it's green, it's 2 colours, it goes all the way down and becomes orange at the bottom end, and that's what he uses as the indicator, so when there's a take, the line moves, you can see the bite very clearly. And that's a development that the Czech team have brought into grayling fishing in this country. And the Czech Republic team is in this event, and we're lucky enough to have them on our section this afternoon, so we'll get a chance to see simply the best grayling fishing team in the world using a method that they're absolutely fantastic at.
This style of fishing came from humble beginnings. It was developed in Eastern Europe by anglers who wanted to fish but simply couldn't afford expensive fly line. Instead, they tied a team of weighted nymphs directly to a nylon leader, and Czech nymphing was born. The Czechs, with anglers like Pavel Adamovsky in their side, are still the ones to watch. His team would be among the medal contenders, but others are catching up.
I wouldn't say it's Czech nymphing, because now it's more European nymphing, because everybody contributes: French, Belgium, Polish, Slovak, Czech. So, and why it works so well? I mean, it's probably it's a very simple method. You just need to get a fly to the point where the fish feeds. Yeah? And with that kind of weighted nymphs, that's a very effective method.
The first day was at a close. A welcome pint and the chance to swap stories about the one that got away beckoned. The Czechs would only get second place, with Davy Parker's England team, the Dunkels, winning overall. But this event is so much more than a contest to see who can catch the most fish.
So at the start of the day we talked about an obsession with a single fish, but you know what? This festival is so much more than that. We've seen some fantastic countryside, we've seen salmon, we've seen sea trout, and of course we've seen grayling. But I get the feeling that the European Grayling Festival is a bit more about the people and the banter and the fun that the guys have had on one of the best pieces of river you've ever seen in your life.
He's really taken with the D there, Ford, isn't he? He likes it there.
And that last shot of that bridge, that's where I'll be tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock here.
I hope it looks the same for you and not considerably taller.
No, I don't think so. I think it's a little bit higher than that one, but let's hope we get some fish.
Yeah. Interestingly, I mean, this is the winning team here.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, Fordy couldn't join us on the Sunday,
No.
but that was, well, it's sort of, there's one Italian and two Englishmen. So they did say English Dunkels, but they sort of subbed the Italian. But the great thing about the comp as well, Keith, is that not only, as Andy said, it's a lot of fun and the banter and all that, but they've raised over £47,000.
Really?
I think it's about 15,000 of that went to buy all the nets out on the system, and the rest of it is donated to the D Trust.
Was that the salmon nets?
Yeah, the salmon nets were bought out, and then all the rest of the money goes to the D Trust, which actually looks after the whole valley. And because of all that money that goes to the D Trust, it allows this competition, all the riparian owners, all the clubs, just give the stretches to the competition, so we get to fish stretches that are never fished before, and that's why the competition is so special.
And that's why it's so important for anglers, and unfortunately we're not always great at it. So important that we cooperate and form together and just deal with the locals as they would be dealt with themselves. Welcome back. I've been joined in the body this week by fly angler Hywel Morgan and watching those grayling being caught. I'm supposed to have been grayling fishing twice already this winter, and both times the rivers have been in the fields. Hopefully I'll get it in before, because the grayling season normally finishes about the middle of March, so the trout anglers can get 2 weeks off while they get on the river, don't they?
Yeah, it is. Well, not to make you too jealous, Keith, I'll be out tomorrow morning. So
Okay, that's all right. I don't really want there to be too much rain in your part of the world, but you're making me think I might. Look, this is what it's all about. I mean, look at that.
Now, that was caught the weekend before the championships we just saw now. Now, it doesn't look much in there in the picture, but I put the rod there to show you the scale, and there's the actual rod. And
wow.
If you look at it, so it's above there, and it's just there. So
it's about between my fingers.
It was 47, 48. The biggest in the competition was actually 49 centimetres, so there's some big fish up there.
There are, and a lot of them. I mean, we saw that little tiddlyfish got. It was either a huge minnow, a tiny dace, or a tiny grayling. I'm guessing a grayling.
It was a small grayling,
Was it?
But that's nice to see. You know, you can see the small ones, then the next year, the year after, and then you get those big lumps that are around. Yeah.
Fantastic fishing. Now, although we saw Fordy show us that leader,
yes.
can we just have a look under the water first? Because you've just prepared this for us, and this is giving the game away a bit. This is sort of the flies that were used, and let's have a look at the flies first. Now, this is really interesting because see the way that's hanging.
No, first, it's a jig head.
It's a jig head.
Yeah. And the brilliant thing with this is winter fishing, spring, summer fishing, no matter what depth of water you're fishing, that rides upside down.
Yeah.
So you're getting less snags. The only thing you've got to be careful with, if you snag up If you hold that now, if you pull the line tight, the line will go the opposite to the end.
Yeah.
So if you feel a snag, what you have to do, pull it round and make sure it goes underneath again, so it rides upside down.
Yeah.
And we're catching fish now in places with a lot of snags, whereas before with a normal fly, you were hooked up, and then above that then, although Davy Parker didn't mention it, and he showed his box 240, the fly you see by your hand now, yeah, the egg fly.
The egg fly.
I was controlling for them in that first session, and I would say about 17 of their fish came to the egg fly.
Wow.
So, yes.
And what you've done, you've just tied this on a little leader for us to show it. I mean, slightly exaggerated to show us how it works. So, as this jig head goes
trundling along the bottom
of the river,
and this one's in front of it, and just remember, Scott did mention it in the little clip as well, you lead the flies down.
Yeah.
So you're not actually dragging them down, you're just leading them down, so just keeping in touch. And the one thing you've got to be very, very careful with is the weight of the point fly. If you find it's stopping, right, you've got to go lighter. If you find you're not touching bottom, you've got to go heavier. So in a stretch of maybe 30, 40 yards, you might change that point fly 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
Because you want to be as natural as possible. You want that fly...
dead drift almost.
Just trundling along the bottom as if the natural insect's just been washed away. And that's... If it's unnatural, obviously you're not going to get the fish.
Well, you say as the natural insects washed away, that's what made me think about the fishing directly below your feet, because as you disturb the stones, out come the caddis, out pop the hog lice, everything comes out. And I used to catch a lot of... Giving another secret away now, though it doesn't... In the matches on the tidal Thames years ago, I used to fish downstream in my keep net in that much water. And that's where the big dace were, directly behind the keep net.
Well, in one peg, John Ellis was fishing, and he actually brought a fish to the controller, and he gave the fish to the controller and turned around the controller, can you just unhook him? I can't move. And a grayling had followed him in. This is not a word of a lie. The controller vouched for it, and he just grabbed his flies and went, dropped, and the grayling took.
Guys,
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Let's have, this is the other thing that Fordy saw.
Yes, he was showing the different colour of nylon. This is slightly better because Scott was just a gradual transition. And the problem with that gradual transition, little sort of tentative takes don't show up. But as you can see with the beads there, 2 red, 2 yellow, 1 black. Different colours as well, because different light conditions, one colour will show up better than the other. The other thing is what I've done, I've added this bit onto another bit of coloured, but with black movable markers. If you move your hand up a little bit, you'll see the black marker, and you can move that up and down. So if you're coming down a stretch and you want to fish a really deep hole, instead of having to retie your cast and lengthen it, you can just move them and then fish that deep hole and then shorten it again and carry on fishing down the stretch.
And here's a great tip as well that I've only just noticed, because I wonder, you know what my fetish with knots?
Yeah.
I've just noticed this, what you've done here. You've tied that to a micro ring.
Yes.
So you don't have to lose any of this at any time. That ring's on there all the time.
Or
you just tie
permanently
a different length leader on.
That's it. And then on the other end of that indicator leader as well is another micro ring.
Another micro ring.
Simple, easy. And the beauty with it, it just stays on that reel. That is the French leader. But we've evolved as well. This winter, we haven't had winter. We haven't fished for grayling properly, where it's been really, really cold, you know, -3, 4, 5 and snow and everything. So they haven't been... All the grayling we found in the championships were actually in the fast water. They weren't in the deep holes. Normally, what we do in the winter, we fish with braid. And it's evolved now. We've got this here now.
Now, this really intrigues me because... Let's start at the bottom. This is a standard sort of...
It's just simple coarse fishing.
It's a spectral gel braid.
That's it, yes. That's all that is. And what we used to do, we used to have fly line backing and that on the end of it.
Yeah.
The beauty with that is that it's so sensitive. There's no stretch in it whatsoever. Now, that point fly you showed us, when that's tapping along the bottom, with the braid, you are feeling that fly going tap, tap, tap along the bottom. Now, a friend of mine, Paul Davison, he's actually now built these lines, all in braid. It's... To get round the rules, it's 23 metres of World Championships. So it's a full fly line, but made out of braid. It's got a full taper, so you can actually cast it as a fly line. And then, if you look at these now, I think he's found these from coarse fishing, right? I'm not sure what they are. But when you're going down, if you just hold that, then that will just slide up or slide down. So as you're going into a deeper hole, slide them up. Come into shallow, and the beauty with this now is you're actually feeling it, and you can watch that trundling along. And where normally when we're fishing, we're waiting for the take. Now, using this line, I'm not waiting for a take. I'm actually waiting for the point fly to stop being in contact with the bottom. Because it means either the fish has taken that point fly and stopped it trundling, or it's taken one of the droppers and lifted the point fly up. And the beauty with it, right, the first time you ever use one of these, first time you ever use fishing a braid, I remember I was on the Eden years ago, first time I tried. I've been catching 2.5 pound grayling, really, really nice. And I hooked this fish first time on a braid, and I thought, this is it. This is it, right? This is my holy grail. It's my 4 pound fish. I was screaming, come down with the camera. And honestly, it was just over a pound because there was no stretch. And that's where you have to be careful with this. It's no strike. It's just lift into it gentle.
And the modern rods make such a difference because they're really ultra fine.
This one is a 10-foot, 3/4 weight. Wow. Ideal, so soft in the tip. So you just lift into it. And even the big fish, you're not going to lose them.
Now that's a lot of grayling tactics, and they'll work on big and small rivers,
Oh,
won't they?
yeah.
But the beauty of grayling fishing as well is the types of flies, and you've got a few examples here.
Yeah, I just put a few in the box for you there.
That's like a mini peeping caddis.
There you go, yeah. With an avro bead in the back.
Yeah. So I'm holding it that way up, of course.
It would be upside down.
The other way up, yeah.
That's caught a lot of fish. There is one in there that I don't really want to show you, Keith, but I will.
Okay, which one is it?
There are actually two.
I won't, it's only me and you.
No, I know. That one, right, that one is from Czech. Just looks like a bog standard nymph. But then when you look closely at it, in the tail, or behind the tail, you see the holographic, that red holographic. And for some reason...
Oh, yeah, just see that there. Oh, look.
Just when that catches the light, that is a killer. Tie it without it, and it doesn't catch half as many fish as with that red holographic in the tail.
I'll tell you what, I can see that working in a bigger form on every reservoir, on every small still water.
Hey, don't keep saying that. Don't give all my secrets away.
But that...
No, it does.
But that, as far as rainbows go, has got everything. It's black, so it'll work in dirty water. It's got that bit of holographic glint. You can just see when I move it into the light. That's the perfect show of holographic.
There you go.
It's got the ribbing, so it gives it...
It's a buzzery type effect, segmented, and then you've got that glister in the thorax, which just moves a little bit of water. So it's you know, a fly for all sorts. And the other one is that one. With, if you just, for some reason as well, the UV in the thorax, that caught a lot of fish. Again, for John Emerson, that was his top fly. So
unusual to see purple.
Yes, I know. But for the last...
you can see the glisten in the thorax there. You just see as I move it. Oh, look at that.
And that's spectre dubbing from Czech. And for some reason, I don't know what it is, but it adds so much to the fly.
Yeah. I can see this not only changing the rules as far as grayling are concerned, but certainly for trout on the big reservoirs and
that
small
purple,
still waters.
We've tried it. I tried it last year on, I don't know, for trout, didn't work as well.
Didn't it?
But for grayling last winter and before we had the floods, it was working.
Maybe it needs more people to try it, Hal. He said nudge, nudge. Fly fishing now, I suppose it's still summer tactics really for the grayling.
It is really. I mean, as we've said, we haven't had winter. So the one thing you've got to make sure is be mobile, but also not to spook the fish. Normally this time, cold, you find them in the deeper holes. Don't go past the fast water, the oxygenate water, because they're in there. And the French leader or the touch line I showed you, that enables you to put your flies a long way without spooking the fish.
Great. But mostly, of course, most people will be going for trout. They'll be going on the smaller still waters. What's the best tactics there? To
be honest, if you're going to a brand new fishery, never done it before, if you can find out stocking policy, first of all. If it's predominantly a catch and release lake, then be more imitative. If it's regularly stocked and fish are taken out, then you're going down the lure side of it. Plan of attack, very, very simple, would be a fast intermediate. So it allows you to search out the depths quite quickly. Lure on the point, and if you want to be a little bit more subtle, put a little nymph above it.
If you can use a dropper.
If you're allowed 2 flies. And then using a countdown method. When you start casting, 5 seconds, just let it go down. 10 seconds, 15 seconds, get down to the depth, search all the depths, and semicircle in front of you, cover all the water in front of you. But the one critical thing, don't be in so much of a hurry to reach the middle of the lake, as most people will stand there and try and cast the other side. Start close to the bank. I mean, if you're on this side of the lake, you try and cast to that side. And if you go to that side, you try and cast this side. So start this side, close to the bank. 10 yards or so is enough. Then move out to 12, 14, 16. And once you've reached your maximum distance and covered all the depth, if you haven't had anything, it's time to move somewhere else.
I'll tell you something else that I've noticed. Some people can be in far too much of a hurry to out and cast in again. And I fish literally, and I can see the fly, and the number of times you see a trout coming after it as you're about to lift out, the clearest of water, they'll do it.
The thing what I tell a lot of people when I'm teaching them on a small still water, once you've cast out there, actually turn your rod up the bank when your last bit of retrieve, so you've still got about 6-7 yards of line, and if a fish takes you here, you can actually strike into the fish. If you lift up to recast and you strike, you pull the fly out of the water and it's in the grass behind you. So cover and give the fish a chance from out there all the way in.
I've just noticed in your fly box that, I mean, there is no doubt that if I had one fly to choose...
It's got to be.
For all my fly fishing on still waters, it would be something along those lines, either a hothead damsel like that, a goldhead damsel, or just a straightforward damsel nymph. But that little bit of blue flash, can you see that? You can see that blue holographic. Thank the Lord for HD television. Look, you can see that bit of blue holographic there. Why blue? Why blue with the green?
I don't know, to be honest with you, but it really, really works. But at this time of the year, I like to fish my flies a little bit slower. And the one I would pick, again, same colour, hothead, but it's a zonka. Little bit more movement in the tail. That hair traps a bit more water, so it moves a little bit more mobile, and you can fish it a little bit slower. Got a tungsten bead on it as well, so it'll go down. But you get, when the marabou gets wet, it's a little bit more solid. When the hair gets wet, it's still, and it's got movement for a slower retrieve.
And that's rabbit fur, isn't it? Zonka made out of rabbit fur, It's interesting you say that because, you know, it's all about depth and speed, isn't it? And when you said about that fast intermediate, that clicked in my mind because I tend to use a floater wherever I go, unless it's really windy when I put an intermediate on. And of course, you cast out your floater, you leave it 30 seconds, you wind in, your fly fishes that far below the surface. No matter how long you leave it, you put a heavy fly on, fishes that far below the surface. All you're doing sometimes is pulling them up from the depths. But if you fish an intermediate, as long as the water's deep enough, you can...
Well, the thing is, you're in direct line with the flies. Now, you've got that hinge effect with the floater. Your floater sat on top, your fly's down there. And you can miss a lot of takes because when you're trying to take that 90 degrees out of it, you can't set the hook, where the intermediate is direct contact with those flies. And now with non-stretch fly lines, you know, any little subtle take, you can feel it.
And I can't imagine for 1 second that was much of a subtle take because that is a brute of a rainbow.
That is, I mean, it went back. Quick shot with the camera. I was guiding down at Garnfrud before Christmas, and the client said, "Oh, give me a break for 5 minutes." And lo and behold, that one actually landed in the bank. He lost, honestly, a bigger fish than that. It was a brownie. Oh, stunning. Saw it 3 or 4 times, came in front. The owner was running down with the camera, and the knot on the leader loop slipped.
Oh, did he tie it?
Yes, I'm glad I didn't.
The knot on the leader loop?
Yeah, it just came off.
I bet he blood knotted to the leader loop and,
I don't know what happened. I mean, there'd been big surges in the fight, but he'd fought the fish out. It was no problem, and it just worked it out. And he hardly put any pressure, and he came past, and I was just about to get the net, and it came off. And a few choice words were said.
Oh, no. Luckily in Welsh, so nobody else understood them.
Exactly, yeah.
And what you got coming up next? Apart from your grading fishing tomorrow.
On the D tomorrow.
We're on our knees for that.
Yes, please. And then next week, back down onto Garnfrud, and we've got the second Winter League Challenge on Sunday. So a bit of fun. The whole Welsh bank team are going to be there. So a bit of banter, a bit of camaraderie, and hopefully...
A few spotted things.
Well, let's hope so.
Yeah, what could be better than that? Sounds good for me. That's all we've got time for this week. Don't forget that you can keep in touch with us via the website, Twitter, and good old email, of course, good old email. And that's the way to send us your Young Angler of the Month photos. Please keep them coming in. And remember that you can find podcasts of the show each week on our website, and that the show's also available on demand every week in the Sky Sports section of Catch Up from Saturday morning onwards. Hal, it's been great to see you today, mate. Thanks so much for coming. I've really enjoyed it, as ever. Next week, we're focusing on specimen carp fishing. My guest will be Mark Pitchers, and you'll be able to see him in action on a recent session at Rookley Fishery on the Isle of Wight too. Join us at 7 p.m. on Sky Sports 3. That's next Friday's show with myself and carp angler Mark Pitchers, 7 o'clock on Sky Sports 3. Have a superb week out there, whatever you're fishing for, and tight lines. Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Well done. Lovely stuff. Really well done.
Watch all 6 Sky Sports channels on your mobile and online.